Hi, I'm Dr. Bruce Perry. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and I am grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit about our work with you and contribute somewhat to this project. One of the things I think is so important about what you're doing with this project is bringing awareness to the importance of experiences in shaping who we become as individuals, and then what the impact of that is for family, community, culture. And I do think that one of the aspirations of this is to create a more aware society that can intentionally act on that information about how the brain works, how the brain changes, how trauma impacts development, and take that information, and create better educational, mental health, social service programs that will benefit everybody. How do we help raise a child? How do we create an environment that's going to maximize our potential as a species versus minimize our potential and increase risk? I do believe that some of the answer is in understanding how the brain develops and how the brain responds to threat. Threat, fear, chaos is an enemy of development. It impairs normal development and it induces temporary regression in people who are developed. Now, the reason this is important is because if you grow up in an environment where there are stressors, where there is significant unpredictability in your world, where there's an extreme activation of your stress response because you are living under threat, and the stressors are chronic, what happens is those core regulatory networks become what we call sensitized. And when they're sensitized, what happens is the normal linear relationship between an external demand or an external challenge and the internal mobilization of systems to respond to that gets impaired. Individuals who are lucky enough to have sort of a good balance between predictability, unpredictability, stress, distress, develop a proportional response to stress that essentially has an accurate reflection and an accurate recruitment of systems needed in the moment that are proportional to the demand, right? If you're in a moderately stressful situation, you activate a moderate response. The problem with this is if you don't have a moderate response, if you have a sensitized response, you can have a very simple daily challenge, like a child going to school, and the challenge is getting up and reciting a poem. And rather than being able to do that, their brain literally will respond as if they are in a threatening situation, and they will have fear-based responses. They'll have a fight or flight response, or they'll shut down. They won't perform, and they will have a bad experience in school. They'll have a lower probability of succeeding in school. They'll have a lower probability of doing well with peers, and they end up over time with significant developmental challenges. So a child growing up in an environment where there is significant chaos, threat, stress, distress is going to have a much higher probability of having a overly reactive stress response system that will put that child at tremendous disadvantage in school and will put that child at increased risk for social, emotional, and behavioral health problems. There are all kinds of circumstances where individuals are exposed to traumatic events. And when you are exposed to any of these bad things, basically what happens is you're going to get a change in the biology of your brain, and your increased risk in physical, social, and emotional mental health areas is going to be a huge burden to you, to your family, and to your community. And there's just no way that our current mental health system can address those needs. And so what do? What we really need to do is recognize that a healthy, intact culture has elements of healing embedded in it. If you look at, and I'm using this slide is from our work with our friends in Turkey who had hundreds of thousands of people who were injured or killed in the recent earthquake there. We spent a lot of time trying to help them understand that, listen, we have to move things from this unpredictable to predictable category. We had to take extreme stressors and try to moderate them. We had to take experiences that felt uncontrollable and make them more controllable. And there are ways to do this. And one of the major ways to do this is to build capacity in the public. The more the public understands about stress, distress, development, the impact of trauma, and what to do for that, the more likely we are to build a broad cultural capacity to tolerate stressors. And again, this is one of the major aspirations of this project, to teach people about the pervasive impact of trauma. The second part of it is to help people develop regulatory strategies. It's actually regulating for individuals who've been impacted by trauma to have some control over how they talk about it, whether it's through storytelling, whether it's through art, whether it's through talking, whether it's through a different form of expression. But we moderate stressors by learning regulatory techniques, by walking, by running, by swimming, by dancing, by singing, by using culturally acceptable forms of regulatory strategy that may have nothing to do with conventional mental health intervention. And finally, we try to help people develop a sense of controllability. There's nothing more overwhelming and disruptive to healing following trauma than the sense that you have no control over aspects of your own life. But the truth is you do. And this is, again, the great thing about this project. Each individual has controllability over how they create art that tells their story or tells a component of their story. They control when they talk about it, how they talk about it, and who they talk about it with. And they're deciding to share with the broader public elements of their story to communicate and bring positive change. This is what we call agency. They are not helpless. They are actually actively engaged in trying to change the public and the public awareness of these issues in a way that will help heal them and hopefully bring some sense of hope and knowledge to other people. Society and we as people who are responsible for inventing the future, the more we know about these things, the more we can do a good job making changes so that we will have fewer people who are impacted by developmental trauma and we'll have more effective community-based strategies to create healing environments for individuals who are impacted by trauma.